Welcome to Table Talks. I am Pastor Kori Robbins.
And I'm Adam Seat, the lead pastor here at Orange United Methodist Church. And we are so excited to have someone today that is a product of the faith community of Orange United Methodist Church, Wes Strunk. And so, Wes, we are so thankful to have you with us today. And so, Wes is a contemporary Christian musician, artist out in Nashville, Tennessee. And Wes, we're thankful that you'd be willing to join us today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, honored to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, so how about, as Kori and I were preparing for this, we were talking about how the people of Orange probably know you better than they even know us, as we're both relatively new here. So how about you bring us up to speed with what all is going on in your life now, your band, your family, what's going on?
Yeah, no, that statement is definitely true, just because they helped raise me. So many people at Orange have seen me since I was, this big to much bigger, so yeah, love Orange so much, and I'm sure we'll talk more about the amazing people of Orange and just all that kind of history. But yeah, life has been crazy. 2020 for everyone has been crazy, but our life the past few years has been wild because we were in ministry on staff at a church in Atlanta, helped start the church. And when you help start a church or do a church plant, you guys know this, just being in ministry, but you're the janitor, you're the preacher, you're the musician, you're the Bible study lead. And this is not a tooting my own horn. It's just the reality of the roles that have to be filled. Doesn't mean you're the best person for the position. It just means you're available, and you're kind of first in line. So that was a journey. But then about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, we really felt, and before that was kind of the stirring, but we really felt God calling us to Nashville, and it didn't make a lot of sense in some ways. And we stepped out of ministry, which is what we had been in since we got married. We've been married 8 years as of June 9th of this year, and been in ministry the whole time. And so we left Atlanta, moved to Nashville, and really wanted to follow Jesus and what he was telling us to do, but then also to pursue music, because we felt like that was a big part of what he wanted us to pursue with greater intentionality, and even effort. And so we moved to Nashville. I took a job with a painting company here as a project manager. Never been in the service industry. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I had a lot of fun getting to manage crews and doing all that. And after about 10 months of that, quit that job. I jumped into music full time. We did some dates. And then after doing some dates, just me and Callie, us together, we felt God put his finger on things. We kind of rebranded as a band. That was a long kind of prayerful process. And then we launched our band, Nona, in November of last year. So it's been about 6 months. So that's kind of like the career occupational side. And it's been amazing to see God just work through that. And then in terms of the family side, which is more important, we have 2 kids. I have a little boy named Cade, not as little as he used to be. He's 4.5. And then my daughter just turned 3. Her name's Haven. And they are partners in crime in everything. So they're amazing, because I love my kids because they'll actually remind us to worship Jesus and to put our trust in him. So if they sense I'm frustrating, I love it. My son will go, "Hey Dad, you should probably spend some time with Jesus." He'll literally tell me that. It's like the greatest gift. So our kids are just so much fun. And then my wife is a part of Nona, doing music with me, and then also helping raise the kids and doing that at home, which is a much harder job than what I have to do in making music. And then I'll keep this short, but this is just a way that you guys can pray for us as a church. Callie had a concussion last August, so about 10 months ago, and is still dealing with symptoms from that, called post-concussion syndrome. Basically means you still have concussion stuff going on 3 to 4 months after the concussion happens. And so we're getting some answers, and God has worked through it tremendously in our lives spiritually, and done things that we wouldn't trade for anything, honestly. Doesn't mean it's been easy. And so just as you're praying for us, pray for healing for Callie. We really believe in God to do something miraculous in that, and are thankful for the medical community here in Nashville that's been able to help kind of curb some of the symptoms and bring some improvement. But yeah, believing for healing for her. And raising kids is not a low stress environment. Adam, we were talking about that. And, so it's not like Callie is in the dark room, low stress environment every day. She's still active with the kids and being the best mom she can be. And so, yeah, we're just trusting God with that. So that's kind of the 4 to 5 minute life update in the past 3 years. I hope I hit enough milestones to give people kind of an update, but.
Yeah.
Well, That's great, and it's so good to hear. I know you all, when it was Wes and Callie,
Mhm.
you came to Orange and did a concert in our sanctuary that was incredible. I was so uh, excited and grateful to be able to be a part of that, and you both are so talented, and so we really can't wait to hear more about the development of the band and Nona. And I know you recently released a new song, "The
Mhm.
River Bows," and so tell us a little bit about that and the story behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Nona is. I don't have time to go into the story behind the name, but it's from our kids. And the heart behind the band really is to see people fall in love with Jesus and worship Him with the passion and purity of a child. And so that's really what
Mm.
our kids, I think, have ministered to us in a way that we could have never imagined. I mean, when I put on music, from our church, the belonging here in town, or even stuff that we're working on, because they like to vet our songs for us, and be like, Dad, that's not a good song, but this is a great song, So our kids will give us their input. But the way they dance around. I mean, sometimes they're not fully clothed because they're children and they're just being ridiculous, And so the heart of a child is there's obviously sin at stage one. We can attest to that, and Jesus is even working, I think, in an infant and a child's heart and calling them back to Himself. But just to see the way our kids engage with God, they don't care what people think. There's no shame. They believe Him for anything. I mean, it's like if God says it, it can happen. And I think as adults, we're conditioned by fear and shame and different things in our lives that affect the filter in which we view God and His ability. But kids don't have that. And so, anyways, that's kind of where the name Nona came from, and the heart behind it is to remind us to be childlike, not in our maturity, but in our faith, in our pursuit of God, coming and bringing everything to Him. I mean, Kate brings everything to me. Dad, I need help with my shoes. Can I have some carrots? He brings all his requests to me. And I think God, as a father, wants us to bring our requests to Him. And so, anyways, that's just a little bit of the heart behind the band and the name. It's the band is myself, Callie, and then my production and business partner Nate, who goes to our church. And there was just a real synergy in DNA spiritually and just vision for what we wanted to see happen. So that the band just kind of happened, which is really cool. And so we produce and write and record all of our own music, and mix and master that to release it. So yeah, our most recent song, "The River Bows," um, is really a story of kind of our life the past 18 months. And God has taken us on a journey through the book of Joshua, especially the first few chapters, where the Israelites are coming out, ending their kind of desert wandering season and approaching the Jordan River. And they have seen, some of these people have seen, not all of them, but they have seen the Red Sea parted and all the stuff back in Egypt. They've seen manna from heaven. They've seen a cloud, a pillar of fire, and a cloud. I mean, they've seen all these things and God do miracles, the brazen serpent. I mean, we could go through all these things in the Old Testament that God did. They come up to this river. Joshua has just been handed the keys to lead Israel. I'm sure he was really excited about that. Like, wait, what about Moses, this guy who you talked to him through a burning bush? I think he's the man for the job. But obviously Joshua was handed the keys through different circumstances we won't get into with Moses. But Joshua comes up against this river, and it's flood season. It's not, I love that because it wasn't like, oh, the river is actually 2 feet deep right now, so we all, 2 million of us, can get across pretty easily. We'll just hike up our clothes and carry things. No, it's that flood stage, and I've read that Jordan River can be 50 feet deep at flood stage and a mile wide. So it's sometimes in life, God gets you to a place that is the most overwhelming it could ever be, but it's so He can be the one who parts the sea. And I think that is the story that we wanted to communicate in the song "The River Bows." And so the bridge of the song, kind of the culmination of everything, is "You're the King and the river bows." And so the whole point is that when God stands up, He's the King, He's sovereign. That we've heard kind of mountains bow before you, but we wanted to kind of spin the idea of the river bows, and the image of a river kind of bowing is it actually being pulled back so that you can get across it. And so for us, we've been facing a lot of just impossibilities and challenges. I mean, doing music is not easy. A lot of people know that, but it's definitely a step of faith, and God's got to be in it for it to actually happen. At least I believe that And so for us, it was, hey, we're facing this river. We never crossed it before. But, you know, we have seen you do things in the past. We've seen you part the sea. We've seen you provide in ways that we can't explain. Some through people at Orange just believing in us. And there's so much stories in that. But for us, it's like, you know what? It's a reminder. If I hold on to the promises of God, and he told Joshua in Joshua 1 to meditate on my word day and night. Don't let it depart from your lips. Don't be terrified. Don't be afraid. Be strong and courageous. And I love that because courage is different than faith, because courage is a decision made even when there's still fear. I believe when you're in faith, you can't be in fear at the same time. So when you're in fear, you're not in faith. And when you're in faith, you're not in fear. But with courage, you're still afraid, but you're acknowledging that God is bigger than the thing that you're afraid of. And so for me, it was an act of courage. Hey, this is terrifying, but God is bigger and God is stronger and he's more able. And so we're going to choose to have courage and trust in him and know that he can do the impossible even when we can't. So that's kind of the story behind, there's some tangents in there too, but that's the story behind the song. And we've got some great feedback on the song, just testimonies. I mean, we had someone in England reach out and share the song as a worship song of the week for their ministry, and they literally pulled, there's a scripture in Joshua, I think it's 23, about not one of the promises God made to the Israelites failed to come to pass. And that's at the very end of Joshua after they've taken the promised land. And this ministry in England pulled that scripture out just from the song. I didn't share that or the story, and that's what we want. It's like, I want to be able to write a song where you can pick out where in the Bible we wrote that from, because we write all of our songs off of a passage of scripture to point people back to Jesus and back to his word, which we think is the thing and the life that will actually affect change in your own life, you know, and give you hope and faith and courage and all those things. So yeah, that's the long and short of the story behind the River Bells, and we're excited it's out and people are streaming it, listening to it. It's available wherever you listen to music. So we pray that more than anything else, that it encourages people to look to Jesus when things are overwhelming and seem impossible in your life.
Well, you know, the beautiful thing about that story there, as you've just shared that, I couldn't help but keep thinking about, I like that the parting of the Jordan more than I like the parting of the Red Sea, because with the parting of the Red Sea, you know, Moses holds up his staff, they walk across on dry water. But with the parting of the Jordan doesn't part until the priests step in to the water carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And so they had to get their feet wet before. And that's beautiful about the way that you talked about courage, because they had to overcome that fear to step into the waters for the waters to part. And that sort of sounds like the way that you are living out that faith. You're willing to step into the waters and trusting that God is going to part those waters. But God requires us to first step. So
yes, good. No, the second verse of the song, I mean, you basically just wrote it with what you said, but it's I will carry your presence, casting every fear aside, stepping out in the current, I feel the river running dry. And so it's that image of like, hey, I'm stepping out and the water's still running, but it actually is running dry, and we'll be able to cross on dry land. But you have to make that step first. And that's Cal and I have talked about that. We've seen God, it's like the enemy's here. We don't have a choice. We got to trust the Red Sea to part, because if it doesn't, we're toast. You know, that's kind of that's the Red Sea moment. But with the Jordan, there were no enemies around. It was purely just, okay, God, you say cross. I got to trust you, step, and then trust that in my stepping, it's kind of like Peter and walking on water. I can't look at the circumstances. I have to fix my eyes on you and believe that your word is actually more the reality than the circumstance in front of me. You know, so I love that. We should have invited you to the songwriting session. I mean, you're right there. So I love that.
anytime I'm available, just give me a call.
Will do.
Well, I know that the people here at Orange truly love and uplift you and Callie, and I heard so much about the two of you before I even came here to be the pastor. And so grateful that this church, they're able to look at you and the way that you're living out your faith now, and they're able to give thanks for the ways that they might have helped poured into that and plant seeds within your life. Tell us a little bit about the story of how Orange might have contributed a little bit to that, a little bit or a whole lot, to that faith formation to help you get to this bold point in faith that you're at now.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely no might. Definitely major help. And I think, I mean, geez, I'm thinking about, I have a 4.5-year-old son. I can't imagine the shenanigans and the things that I did at church and not paying attention and just cause, just practical things of people who helped raise me and even just discipline me to understand boundaries and the grace of God in that way too. No, but Orange is, I mean, Callie and I are so thankful for Orange, and it's honestly, it's threefold. The first phase was me growing up in Orange, being in my house with my mom, my dad, and my sisters, and going to church and hearing about Jesus and hearing the gospel, and being in a church community, being involved in the youth group, which I loved. I had, I still have friends from that youth group, and having that community. And then the other part of it was getting a chance to serve and even kind of learn and do music for the first time at Orange. I mean, I remember I started learning guitar when I was 11 or 12, and the youth pastor at the time, Clay May, was helpful in kind of teaching me certain things, give me a chance to play and do certain things, and then eventually lead worship when I was, 15, when I, good gracious, could not sing. And people still gave me a chance and just said, "You're doing a great job." Like that formed so much of just a skill set, but then also I found that in my life when I'm having to lead, it makes me run to Jesus more, because I'm like, God, if I can't lead these people in whatever, whether it's one person in a coffee meeting or it's an auditorium full of people. I can't do this, but you can. So let's partner together. So I think at a young age, I was thrusted into that in a good way. And so Orange had that formation in kind of my musical journey, obviously in my faith journey. And then when I went to college, I got connected with a great ministry, and that I think just poured gasoline on the fire, and it flamed up in a greater way. And college is such a unique season where you live within 3 miles of all your closest friends at the time, and you can have Bible study at midnight, and you can have Bible study again at 6 a.m. You have Bible study again at, and you can have conversations and go play basketball and talk about Jesus and do all these things. And so I had a great community in college, after my freshman year. And when we went into full-time ministry, it was almost Orange again came around Callie and I, and we were support raising missionaries on the college campus at UNC, and then helping start a church in Atlanta, because there's no budget when a church first starts to pay for staff people. And so the people at Orange, and just dear friends of ours now, and people that we look up to, rallied around us and helped literally provide for us to follow Jesus in ministry. And so there's the being raised in the church and being pointed to Jesus, and there's the musical side of it, but then there's also, it was like I got married and they sent me off in like the grandest of way, but also partner with what we were doing. And I believe when we get to heaven, we'll all be there together, and God's saying, "Hey, well done, my good and faithful servants." I mean, that's what I pray for my life. But I believe it wasn't just Kyle and I going to do stuff. It was everyone who was a part of that we'll celebrate together in eternity, And so that's kind of the threefold way. And I'm still connected with people at Orange who follow our music and support what we're doing. We have a Patreon page, which is kind of a platform for independent artists, for people who want to partner with what they're doing to further the career and all that stuff. And there's people from Orange still on that are a part of it and give us feedback. So again, it's just, Orange is one of the most generous churches that I've ever known. I've been in a lot of different ones, and they will pray heaven down for you too. If you got something going on, these prayer circles, I'm like, let me just email the Orange prayer circles real quick, because I know something's going to happen, because they're fighting for you. So anyways, I could talk a lot more just on, what Orange has meant to me, and even how it is a support system for us even now. And I think it's the beauty of the church, right? You guys are a local community in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which I miss dearly. I love Chapel Hill so much. Oh my gosh, I love North Carolina. But it still plays a part in our lives in Nashville, in a different local church, but we're all connected as the big C church, on mission with Jesus. And so I think that's the beautiful thing about the local church and being a part of the greater global community of Christians that follow Jesus, is we're all on the same team, So yeah, love Orange from the bottom of my heart. Love Orange.
Well, they love you.
Yeah.
So, and they do, they pray for y'all and long to support you in so many ways, including, like you said, on Patreon and spreading the message of your music. But how exciting is that to be an artist, and how challenging is it to be an artist right now? I can only imagine. So we'd love for you just to talk to us a little bit about what it's like being a Christian artist today, and with the exceptional circumstances we find ourselves in. You can go as in depth as you'd like, speaking to that. But what is it like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it's a two-part question too, because it's like being an artist and then being a Christian artist, because there's different challenges to both. And I've written songs and produced music for other people for a while, and I've done songwriting, professionally for longer than I've even done kind of the artist thing. And if I'm honest, I actually ran from the artist thing for a while. I felt back in 2015, God encouraged me, and that I'm going to use that word as a euphemism, but He encouraged me to do the artist thing. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. That's too hard. There's too many impossibilities with that. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'll write for other people and I'll kind of help them make their music and sound good and stuff like that. But really, honestly, the past year, 6 months, God has reminded me of that. And in some ways it felt like a promise from Him, but I didn't view it that way. And so all that being said, I've really owned more of that in the past 6 to 9 months, even, and 12 months. And it's just been an amazing journey of doing, because as an artist, there's so much that goes into it now. It's not just making music and waiting for a record label to sign you. There's a graphic design, there's video work, there's social media management. I'm not a huge fan of social media myself, just because I try to be more present with my family than present on my phone, and it's already a battle, and so I call it a necessary evil. It's not inherently evil, but just in my own life, it's something that I'm growing in. But there's so many pieces to it. And so for me, the artist was a step of faith to, again, trust God. But it's been an amazing journey. And then I work with a lot of other artists, some Christian and some not Christian. And so that's a really interesting thing, because, when I'm in the writing room with somebody, writing a song with someone who does not believe in God, their filter is very different than mine.
Right.
So we have to have some very honest conversations of like, I see what you're saying. This is my pushback on that. And so I used to wrestle with, how can you write kind of mainstream, more secular music as a Christian? I think I'm learning more how to do that, but I never compromise who I am for the sake of a song. So that's kind of on the artist side. And then on the Christian artist side, it's really, a lot of it for us has just been trusting God with the next steps, but also working in partnership with Him and putting our hands to the plow, so to speak. So it's not just waiting for doors to open, but it's walking and doing all that you can to get to the door, and then know that God's going to help open it, or it may already be open for you, And so, like, even with our band Nona, things have gone really well the first 6 to 8 months for us, a lot faster than we expected. We're having some great conversations here in town, with different representation. We have a manager, we have someone helping represent our music who believes in us, we have a graphic designer, we have all these things that kind of fall into place, and it's totally just a God thing. But we've been faithful to work toward the goal, And my favorite thing about being a Christian artist is being able to make the name of Jesus known in song. Because, and this is kind of a depressing fact for you guys as preachers and pastors, but people don't leave reciting your messages, they leave singing your songs. And so for me, as I've preached before as well, and I know what goes into preparing that, and I try to put in work into a song to make sure that the substance is there, the truth is there, the message is there, so that when someone hears it, it has the intention, and when they put something in their ears that then goes into their mind, that then goes into their heart, it edifies the soul and points them back to Jesus. So that's the fun part about being a Christian artist. And for the songs I write that aren't inherently Christian songs, I still try to lace that in there, even if it's really subtle. So I think you can feel the spirit behind songs, even if it's not a Christian song, dark or light. And so I try to make sure mine have the light lacing of Jesus in those songs. And then, being an artist right now, with COVID-19, everything's been shut down. Music is not an essential business. I would argue it's essential for life and people to have hope and different things. But in terms of like venues and touring, we've had some dates and stuff canceled, and festivals and things that were on the calendar. In some ways, though, for us, unlike, I have some friends who were signed to labels and doing 80 to 100 dates a year, this has been life altering for them, and because their whole income is gone. for us, because we just started as a band, it's not as much affected us because in some ways it's helped us, which is weird to say that. I don't mean that, and this is a good thing overall, but we're able to release more songs to get them out before we even do some dates, to have a little bit more of a log to pull from. So in some ways, it's helped our band just in our unique situation, but with the artists that I work with and write for, and even just on kind of a business level, it's definitely affected what I do, because I do music for a living and help write and produce other songs for other artists as well as our own. And so it's made things, different and difficult, but I'm thankful. Like, I work out of my house, and, you're kind of seeing part of the studio here that we have set up to record. It's treated and stuff. So I'm grateful that, my office didn't shut down because it's in my house. And a lot of people, that's not the case. So they've had to be creative to do that. So it's cool to see, even in our own lives, how God's kind of prepared us for things that we didn't expect at all, especially on this global kind of level. But he's making a way through it, and you're having to adapt. But I think that's a great skill, and even a godly skill, to kind of work out, is adapting to what God is saying, and not being so rigid in your way that God says do something like, oh, that can't be you. Well, God's like, well, it is me, because I'm talking, and this lines up with my word, but you're so kind of in your way that it doesn't happen. And so I think God's taught us the value of being adaptable in career, and also just being willing to listen and have hard conversations with people who are going through all sorts of stuff as artists kind of in this time. So hopefully that answered your question. It's kind of all over the place, but.
Oh, that was great though. But we're so thankful that you've allowed us into the studio with you there today. We're thankful for your time. I see the guitars in the back of the room. I like to play a little bit myself. And so I just have to ask from one musician to another, what's your favorite guitar that you got back there?
Jeez. And Adam, the dangerous thing about living in Nashville is I can just drive, 10 minutes on the road and get whatever thousands of dollar guitar to borrow from a buddy. I have a Fender Telecaster that I use for a ton of guitar work, which I love, so I've kind of set it up how I like it, and the sound's great. So, but I use so many different instruments and guitars for what we do. It's hard to pick one, but that's the one I probably use the most, and I love it. It's just kind of like my old faithful. I know how it feels. I get my eyes, and just I know exactly what it's going to sound like. So Fender Telecaster for me has been my favorite electric so far.
Yeah. My dad gave me a Gibson Melody Maker. I can't remember, 1963, I think, that was it. And I love to just take that off the wall and start playing. It just, it's set perfectly for me. So
yes, the old guitars, you got to hold on to those, because their value just keeps going up. And then obviously the sentiment and the memories attached to it.
Right.
Yeah, you can't beat it.
Right. Well, we are so thankful that you were able to reconnect with us today a little bit. Well, reconnect with the church. And I'm thankful to have the opportunity to connect with you in this way, and look forward to post-COVID-19, maybe being able to have an opportunity to share in some ministry with you again. And just one last thing that I'm reminded of, your dad, Rick Strunk, who was our second guest he was the first guest actually on our second episode of Table Talks, but he had shared with me one time that you had an opportunity, I think in this past year, to actually speak at your church there in Nashville. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that I told my dad, that's probably the most out of the blue moment I've had, because, I preached some back in Atlanta. It was a smaller church. It just started, maybe 125 people, and again, numbers don't really mean anything, but our ears hearing the message of the gospel and hearts that can respond to it, but our church in here in Nashville is, 4,000 or 5,000 people. And, honestly, I had been I don't mean this to sound pious, but just serving Callie, serving my kids in the transition of moving with all the stuff going on, her health stuff been going on for 3 months. So I wasn't really serving in the church the way that I'd planned on or wanted to at this point, because we just had so much going on in life and moving. But I got a call from a friend of mine who's one of the main pastors. I said, "Hey, Wes, you want to preach?" He said, "What are you doing in November, first Sunday in November?" This is last year. I said, I'll probably be at church, and I actually thought it might be more in the musical lane of covering for somebody on guitar, you know, and the list of musicians at our church is just ridiculous, you know, so they don't have a need for that. But I thought maybe this is what they need. And he said, actually, we're doing some kind of special Sunday. I'd love to have you preach. And, you know, part of me was terrified, part of me was excited, you know, and I was honored to do it. So yeah, I got to share, and it was cool because I got to prepare and share something that I was not on my radar before Callie had her concussion, and I preached on our battle is not with flesh and blood, but with principalities and evil in the heavenly realms, and that reality of we so often just want to fight flesh and blood, but that's not the battle, you know. And even Peter, when Jesus' captors came to take him, to then eventually take him to the cross, Peter cut off the ear of the high priest, and then Jesus heals the ear of one of the accounts. And that story, I never realized it, but Peter missed that the battle was actually in the garden when Jesus asked him to pray, not when the captors in flesh and blood showed up to take him away. And so God hit me with that of like, hey, Wes, don't be swinging your swords at people, cutting off ears, and I have to do some extra repair work to heal the ears. Fight when I'm asking you to fight in the garden, when you don't see the enemy, but the enemy is advancing in its most aggressive form and state. So that's kind of a little nugget from the message that I preached. But yeah, I was honored to do it, taken aback, and it was a lot of fun though. I had a good time.
Thanks for that nugget. I'll get to watch this again and take notes, and I might get to use that sometime.
Oh man, appreciate it.
Well, we're thankful for your time today. Pastor Kori, any closing questions or thoughts?
No, just a huge thank you. And this was a gift to us. And I know that the song will be a gift to so many folks. And just to remind them, it's called The River Bows, and you can find it wherever you get your music. So please listen. Yeah,
absolutely. Wes, thank you so much. It's been a blessing today. And I hope everyone else that's watched it is also blessed.
Yes, thanks. Love you guys and love Orange so much. I hope people know that. If they get anything from this, I love Orange so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.